pause Pestle Rocks because this is going to be a conversational kind of stream. Mostly because I don't feel like trying to record something and put it online. I'm just trying to go ahead and talk through it. So I have someone who's recently been following me on YouTube, which thank you. Let me see if I can give them a shout out. Where was their username? The Galloway Gal. Um, Plays, I think, one of the other Iron Realms, if I remember correctly, and just watched the video and was very interested in what was happening, but doesn't really have the background. So I figured I do kind of just a general run through of some of the stuff that's been going on recently in Aetolia for anyone that may want to kind of just I don't know how better to say it, but just kind of have an idea in case you see some of my other streams come through. And it is a quiet night, so hopefully I should be able to go through this pretty decently well. Now, right now, I normally am playing a spirit character. I am logged into my shadow character, so just be aware that when I'm looking at some of this stuff, you may see things that are involved on the shadow side. So let's just take this back. Let's go look at read news events. Let's even see how far back do we need to go. 270 seems too far back. So let's see here. 271. Over the rainbow. Yeah, I feel like some of this is like the last event. Yeah, this is some of this is last event. So I'll actually go into kind of some of these posts here and we can run into it. This one definitely is not applicable really, but the rest of these here are could be related. So just to give background, Aetolia is a multi-user dungeon, a MUD, done by Iron Realms that has been around since 2001. It's been around for a long time. Originally, it was created to be a mirror of Achaea with vampires, basically. That was the big difference. I was there for the original events alongside Belgarion and a few others. Definitely don't have my original characters anymore. I am classic for retiring characters, which is it's not a good thing necessarily, but I have done it quite a few times. But that was the original start from the game of the game. So originally our major cities, which came from Achaea, were Ashton and Shalom and Eleusis. We still had those ones. Then we ended up getting unique ones to our game, which were Bloodlock and Spine's Reach. Now, Ashton has long since been destroyed in our game. It was a while ago, but it used to be a neutral city that allowed both vampires, which are part of the Shadow Tether, to be part of it, plus people of Spirit Tether, of such related organizations. Back in the day, though, those weren't necessarily specifically a thing. There was not really Shadow Tether or Spirit Tether. There was definitely lines to make you good or bad, but it wasn't in that specific sense. Shadow and Spirit Tethers are more mechanical, intended to be more mechanical than anything else to help for class balance. Now, has it worked out that way very well? No, and they are doing things to fix that, but that was the original intent. So going back to things, as far as what happened since then, we've had a lot of events over the years, obviously. Like I said, Ashton's been destroyed. Shalom is no more. It is now Enorian is the name of the city, which is kind of built on the ruins on top of, if I remember correctly. Maybe wrong. And then there is Duran, or Duran, whichever way you want to pronounce it, that replaced Eleusis. Eleusis is definitely gone. We also have a lot more unique classes compared to Achaea. We still have some of the classic ones as far as, monk and different knight classes and that sort of thing, but they all have a variety of different looks and feels. I think monk is probably the only one that's still fairly close to what I saw in Achaea and what I saw in Empyrean. May not be what there is there now in those games, but back in the day, they were pretty much identical and still are in some ways compared to some of the other Iron Realm games that have come out. Okay. Now, with all of that said, I'll go ahead and outline kind of what the different tethers are. So, spirit is your traditionally good, shadow is your traditionally bad. But before anyone fusses at me about saying it that way, there are areas of gray on both sides. It is, again, more of a mechanical thing. And realistically, it's more to help separate vampirism and undeath from the living and from those that are fully against, undeath and against the heavy uses of shadow. Now, to go into those elements themselves, shadow is one of the elements, and it's a hungry element. It is natural in everybody in the world, but it's just hungry. It wants to devour everything. And then light is more the essence of life. It's kind of a living thing, but even that, having too much of that could be a bad thing. And then there are all your other normal elements, so fire, air, earth, water, all of those things. Now, typically, as things are right now, the elements of earth and air did lean more towards shadow side, as far as if we're talking like spheres of where things lean. And then water and fire leaned more to the spirit side. And that was primarily because also the gods related to it fell across those lines. So air and earth still are shadowy type gods, whereas fire and water are on the spirit side. Plus, thematically, earth is involved in making people just normal undead. Air is not. And then on the spirit side, fire is part of some things that would be considered purification for undead and that sort of thing. And water too. So that's why they tend to lean over there. But are they actually aligned to one element over the other? That's kind of up in the air in debate. I don't know that it's been... they do kind of follow around those lines, but if you look at some of the other lore, as far as some of the other things going on in the game, they may not be. Okay, so that's explaining kind of at a base level that part, the tethering. So when you look at the lines, you've got people that are leaning into shadow because they are trying to use whatever means necessary to either protect the world or to protect their people. But then you have the undead and the vampires who use it to help keep their souls kind of stuck in their bodies so they don't get out. And then you have the spirit people who use it, obviously, to bring about life, to fight against too much shadow being in the world, and to just, bring about all sorts of other things inside the game that you would really have to dive into as far as lore goes. But there are definitely, like I said, differing areas of gray, because realistically, the people that are in Spine's Reach, they are the ones that really dabble into a lot more shadow than some of the other places do. But they are primarily, most of them are living. So when it comes to things that lean into living tropes, sometimes they are kind of, maybe we should be doing that versus helping out the vampires and the undead. But they do allow vampires and undead, so they are in that gray territory a little bit there. When it comes to, say, Duran, which is primarily, it's an organization that focuses on a plane called Dendara. It is a wild plane. Kind of think of the Emerald Dream in a way, or even whatever the new one is from Shadowlands and WoW. I can't think of what it's called right now, but it kind of leans into some of those tropes there. What was I going to say there? So realistically, they're not fans of shadow necessarily because it does corrupt Dendara, because it's a spirit plane. It's very heavily touched by spirit, so shadow touching it corrupts. Does that mean that shadow is inherently bad? Not necessarily, but it does do that corruption. So it needs to not be in Dendara, so they are very not wanting to see more of it in the world, because technically Dendara, which is another plane, and this is all getting very convoluted. Hey, Yeti, I'm actually doing a video for someone that's been watching me on YouTube, so don't mind me. I'm going to be going over, trying to get to like the events, but I'm trying to give some background for them about Aetolia. Anyway, so Dendara, which is that spirit plane, is linked to Duran directly, like because of a goddess of life giving up her life to help heal Dendara. So it made it linked to the prime PMP, prime material plane. So the main plane with all the normal cities and everything. So if there is too much shadow coming into it, there is too much shadow going into the door and causes all sorts of issues. So that's why that city tends to lean against shadow, but it does have times where it's not like in Noreen, which is that typical trope of being pretty darn holier than thou kind of good mindset. Duran's a little bit more gray in the sense that they don't do it for the greater good. They don't do it, for, the innocence or anything. Individuals might, but as an organization, they're more like, if it's gonna help Dendara, we'll do it. If it's not, then we're not kind of mindset, more than, worrying about, hey, does this affect spirit? We don't really care kind of thing there. And I'm giving all of this background because it will be important to know about the gray areas because of some of the events that had happened. So starting back in October, there were a few events related to a guild being released. It's the Earth Callers, which ended up going into the Terradrim. It is a mirror class, which is important to note, a mirror class of the Luminaries. So that's their new thing, is to mirror each of the different classes to actually make true class balance. And the Luminary class is basically priests with fire. And then the Earth Caller is basically priests with earth, more or less, but bones and some other stuff. It's really cool. Anyway, so they had an event back in, as I have it on my screen, back in October that released that particular thing. But the bad thing is that it ended up causing a bit of a rift that started some wars back then. So Duran, obviously, because they're very also a nature city, they are very much about life continuing, Earth not being, brought down to having no life in it. And that's kind of what the event was doing, was involving a lot of that. So there ended up being fighting between like Bloodlock and the Terradrim, the Earth Callers, and Duran, and ended up kind of getting a little bit muddied. And then there were some events here after that involved, Diantha, which is an entity of the astral plane. So when they mirrored, when they were doing the mirrors, one of the more recent ones is there's the Indurani class, which is your typical necromancer class, a cultist from Achaea. They mirrored it so that there is an astral version, which is a kind of good version. So the astral plane is like basically chaos, but good chaos, positive chaos in a way. So when that was what this one is related to, specifically when they released that mirror class at the same time. So that definitely didn't really cause any conflict on that part. But that was going on all around at the same time to make sure that we were balancing releasing those classes out. So a little bit of craziness. Not sure that the One Romancer, which is the Mirror Indurana class, don't know if that event really affected any of the current events necessarily. But definitely the other one is involved in some of this other stuff that came up as far as like tensions and what was going on. So later on in November, this is where I'm going into here, where it's talking about, in this post, talk about Copperhead of the Third Spoke, Emissary of Calchos, and some of these other things. Basically, it was a living machine that was brought around during the event. And unfortunately, I wasn't around for a lot of these events, so I don't know the details beyond what's in the post. But basically, part of the Albeti, if I remember correctly, and just as kind of a side note, since I haven't touched on the Albeti, the Albeti are gods of another, Albedos is another area, another landmass, and they have their own gods, which we refer to as the Albeti gods. A lot of them have been locked away in prisons in our game, and we have been steadily, every so often, and usually accidentally, releasing them. And usually most of them have been fairly tame and not too terribly volatile, besides just wanting to be free. But there have been a few instances where they have been very dangerous and have caused a lot of issue. So coming to find out that this, entity came and showed up, it just obviously puts everyone on edge. And then some of our gods, like Bamathus, is basically a god created specifically, the warlord, the god of strife, was created specifically to fight Albedi beings and whatnot. So he's heavily involved in that event, and they were basically trying to, destroy it. I don't know how better to say it here, so I'm trying to look through this and actually read if I can get any specifics. So violence erupted in Massilia. Massilia was where they had the Cogger showing up. Massilia is a little village of undead things, and I think are magic casters or something that's near Bloodlock. So they started to fight. Spirit and Shadow were fighting, and basically because of their fighting, the energy of it really brought attention to one of the Albedi gods that is not so nice. Yeah, Yilvamon. And ended up kind of bringing his attention, and just a bunch of chaos was happening because of it. And I'm giving such a horrible explanation of this one just because I wasn't around for it, unfortunately. But that is kind of a rundown of background, getting into some of these posts that happened back in October and November. So part 2 is, let's see, they had the battle, and there's Yilvamon the Fury awoke because of their battling. Because obviously Shadow and Spirit, they just hate each other anyway, so they're gonna fight most times whenever tensions get too high. But because of anger and rage and fighting fueled him, he had pretty intense power that our gods really weren't going to be able to stand much of a chance against him. Hearn, even, which is the hunter, that is one of our Durrani gods, basically the protector of Dendara. He came out and tried to help, but unfortunately it just wasn't working. Even Tanalthas, which by the way is the air god, that is a dragon that basically ate the heart of the air god. Oh my gosh, there's so much behind this stuff. Even tried to come in and fight. I'm just kind of glancing through here. And I think that's the big thing, is that there was a lot of fighting. All of our gods kind of try to come in and get Yilvamon knocked down and try to get him weakened, and did end up being weakened, and then escaped before they could actually manage to kill it. So let's see, going through some of these other posts. Okay, so the thing that ended up being in the Massilia area that really was part of the biggest piece of it was this confluence. The confluence was a machine, which we've been seeing a lot more machines show up in the game, that are, just things that help give information of varying kinds. Yeah, Yeti, I am kind of lost on the whole Varian hate. I think I missed part of that. Yeah, see, what the thing with Varian is, we're learning a lot from this particular section here when we get into the confluence that brings about a lot of the Varian hate. It started definitely back when Avaretti, which was a goddess mixed of our gods and Albedi gods, when he just had her straight up killed, the hate for Varian started to be a thing then. And people started being a lot more skeptical in game about his motives and what he's doing and why. And a lot of the events that have been going on are just fueling it and making it worse. And I'm definitely going to get into that. But let's speak to the confluence. The confluence, again, Massilia, is a little device. And basically, it's giving visions of the past, of previous events that none of us knew about, that they weren't things that we would be aware about. So basically, let's see, trying to read through here. So the accordance, let's see, calculations by Calcos, we were identified at least degraded Cogger iteration with greatest likelihood of predicted success. Okay, this might be some of this was just going through Cogger's. He was also a living machine, obviously, so some of this may be Cogger's memory. So let's see. Following transoceanic transversal, we commenced our investigation. They got some networks, mandated warning level fire. Addition to vernacular library was made rest head. Okay, this is part of this is Cogger's taking in some of the information separate from the confluence itself. So they were just kind of looking for anomalies. Cogger ended up going and attacking Spine's Reach in this time, which caused more issues for for Duran. Duran, several of the people just wanted to let it do its thing and not help Spine's Reach. Because Spine's Reach gone, we don't care. It was kind of cruel, but very on par with the roleplay, unfortunately. So that's part of it. So Yeti knows if you weren't aware of some of like the reasons why there's such bad tension between Spine's Reach and Duran. That's part of it, and it's going to get worse as I go through some of the stuff that happened. But it does look like this is just Cogger's recollection of what happened. Let's see, terminating emergence of maker intervention recipients, retreat, and preservational directives. Okay, so he ended up going into hiding, it looks like, after he kind of did an analysis of the world and what was going on. All right, so let's see what we got here. So next part, the third party. Under the cover, that was they sailed. Oh, this is when the boats started to show up. Some boats started to show up over Albeti. Interlopers started to show up in Norian's bays, and there was a lot of fighting. This was actually really cool because they ended up having boat stuff that was going on. I'm about to say boat stuff that was going on, and it was really cool, very unique. This is part of where I started to come back in, and I remember seeing about it because I took a month break just for a variety of reasons. Anyway, so that was all the boat stuff, lots of fights, actually being on boats and shooting harpoons and all this fun stuff. It seemed pretty epic from what I was understanding. And if you ever want to, the Weekly Milestone is a podcast or broadcast stream that you can find on YouTube as much as on Twitch. And some of their discussions back in November should actually give you some details on that, because I do remember them discussing the ship stuff. Okay, so let's see. This is late part of the month. They had the Hekathi incursion in Anorian, so that was all done. Yulvaman was showing back up after a focus battle, which, like I said, that was part of the thing, is he was summoned whenever there was fighting. Copperhand remained a mystery until Midhernos, when there was a warning of being uncritical. Oh no. I'm trying to see, glance through here and see if there's anything in particular. So Penn misses and field orders were discovered about the Serpent, revealing the Hekathi's twin objectives to secure the Aeonic confluence for the Autarch. I don't remember that part. And I am weirdly losing my voice today. Don't know why. Okay, so this is more just boat stuff, honestly. Not necessarily Copperhead himself, but just Copperhead the Cogger. It's not really talking about him too terribly much. Really just still about the boat stuff. Okay. There's more boat stuff, so this is talking about Caesaria's mission and the fight and them, talking and trying to figure things out and getting the Dawnbreaker ready to go do the fight and win. Now, while the Navy battle was going on, this is the thing that was that happened. That was actually a good part of why Duran is so anti-Bamathis. I mean, everyone's hating on Bamathis for their own reasons, but this is part of it. So, in this instance, it was made an agreement with Hearn, the hunter, the Durrani god, that he would actually help make a trap to trap Yavalamon alongside Bamathis and Severin, so that they can go ahead and get him stuck and kill him, destroy him, etc. Because, it seemed like it would be a very, very good plan. Now, I will be getting to that plan, but basically what was decided is all mortals, which is not really talk about it, but they were all meet in, was it the Izadal? It was somewhere out that way, near Siluria, because we had this whole thing about clearing out the Silurian villagers. They were like talking about that and being very concerned about them. I remember that. But the plan was for all of us to go fight in the Eastern Itzel. Thank you. It's Adel. So we were all going to go fight there and meet with the gods, and the gods were going to have the trap laid, and it was going to be, you know, the way we were going to lure him is with the fight from the mortals, and then do the trap and then kill him. But this did not go as we expected. So I'm going to go ahead and go to the next one. So the Break of Dawn, that's a Norian doing their stuff, and it names a bunch of people of who was involved. And talk about Sliff being involved, or Slife, whichever way it's pronounced. Yes. So it ended with, meanwhile in the north, Copperhead of the Third Spoke continued its search. So Copperhead was just searching, trying to do his thing to find its objective. It got to Spine's Reach, and commence would be a weeks-long search for the non-functional remnant, to which it had been alerted to. And it kept going through the catacombs and just kept digging and digging and digging. And basically it was destroying Spine's Reach. This is where we definitely are going through, and it's destroying Spine's Reach. So it ended up getting to a point. I don't know specifically. I'm trying to see if it says here that they did it at this point. Into the sewers, despite value to defend Copperhead from the assault, reclassified as asset. Okay, so this is the part. So basically, the Spyrians ended up kind of tapping into Copperhead to try to figure out what was going on in his mind and figure out the protocols. And basically, the Durrani people even went so far as to come attack people while they were doing that. Not all of us, but a few ended up going to do that. So that's another reason why Duran and Spine's Reach have some really rough ties. But it did eventually declare Spine's Reach irrelevant. It exhibited confusion as to its location, and before it ambled away back to Massilia. So it ended up being able to Spine's Reach was saved. Yay. Okay. Now we're getting into the breakage. Okay. I'm trying to see here. Canceled the shaman, ritual slab, blah, 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 blah. Just kind of glancing through here. So, yeah. So this is where we had some events where two of our people ascended to level 200. There was a Valerie and there was Illidan, which became Illical. So this is just a brief thing related specifically to their raising, to becoming their end game races. There was a brief break there, and then the next parts of the event is definitely what happened. So here we go. This is where everybody hates Bamathis and Duran, and why Duran and Spine's Reach, which was the biggest breaking point of it all, is that the hunter set a trap. It was a living trap. It was actually part of Dendara. It was a Dendara creature. Full on just from Dendara. So very precious to Duran, very precious to the hunter, to Hearn. They brought it in to go ahead and have it be the trap. Bamathis and Severin lure it over there. And Bamathis doubts Hearn. Doubts that it's going to work, even though Hearn is reassuring him that, yes, it's going to work. And Severin and him basically push a bunch of shadow into the Dendara trap, which did have a name, by the way. I just don't remember what it was. And killed a chunk of Dendara. Hearn definitely was not happy about that. And that's a big reason why Duran people call Bamathis the Oathbreaker, because he promised to keep to the plan and everything, and to be, wary with the trap, that sort of thing. And he broke his promise, which is a big no-no with Bamathis. He is very much all about his oaths. So yeah, the trap didn't work, and because it caused all sorts of fighting afterwards and everything, Ylvaman just got more strength and ended up owning them and leaving. So yeah, Bamathis failed miserably. didn't trust like he should have, and got them screwed and being able to actually kill Yavalamon. So, not fun. And definitely had a lot of people in Duran very, very, very sad. Okay. All right, and I promise I'm going through all of these older posts, which are from last year, for a very good reason. So here, this is the big one, and this is probably the one that Yeti, you should go read through. It is Events Post 283. This is the Recollections, which is actually that machine that was in Massilia, the Confluence, is actually where it gave those visions, kind of the idea of, the whole Caduceus thing, which I'll get to later. But it goes through and shows like the early world, shows like different dreams, shows what Varian did. So here we go. This is the big one. So 3 figures stand apart from each other upon a high set spill of silvery essence laid about the all-colorful gardens of creation. The sky is a mercurial churn of distant color, gathered thick as though a premonition of coming cosmic storm. So they are gods threefold, 2 + 1, and they grieve. So they had the twins, which is Lanos and Severin, and then they had Varian. So Varian says, "And I will not destroy her." A shudder running through him. "I have already cast aside one daughter this day. I will not suffer the loss of another. The fault of her undoing does not lie with her." But Severin, basically said, "I do not like this either, brother. But our father's theory is sound. Her sanity stems from the conflict between who she was and what she has become now." Which is basically, from what I understand, is supposed to be talking about Chakrasol, because Chakrasol used to be the goddess of strength, but is now the goddess of corruption now. Which I wonder, now that I'm looking at this, because we are told that there is a god of darkness, if somehow she originally was created as a different god and then kind of made to become darkness when she wasn't. That's a curious thought, a very curious thought there. But it does speak basically to some other god had been killed at this point. We don't really know which one. Yeah, they're saying, our Chakrasol. So yeah, it is talking about Chakrasol will never return to being the normal. If you will not destroy her, then let the toss fall to me. So they were talking about trying to kill her because she was, not going to be who she was supposed to be. Anyway. And Chakrasol is not the only one I must do this to basically kill, by the sound of it. You shall both safeguard my creation in my absence. But I guess just, wiping memories. I think that's what it is. So, just reading through here. None can know of the prisons, lest disaster strike again, is what they're speaking to. And their time was running short, so they really have to go and do the whole thing. So basically, Severin and Lanos are supposed to have all the memories of everything prior to the Grand Artifice, and that is, if I'm understanding this, it's not even that Severin did it necessarily, the whole thing. It's like whatever this is back then, he wanted to be the one, Severin wanted to be the one to bear the hidden truth, to spare pain of the rest. And Varian wouldn't allow for it. So you shall both safeguard it in my presence. So both, and this is part of why Ome got really pissed off at Demario, and people are pissed off at Demario in general, is that since he's Lanos' essence, he should know everything that Severin knows now, because Severin and Lanos were the two that were supposed to safeguard creation. So they were supposed to know whatever happened in whatever this situation is about the past, to know everything. Now, the one thing that Lanos, which is Demario, asked in this situation is to make sure to set mortals free, to give them their own free will. So that is a lot of why Demario has the roleplay he does, is that he doesn't want to risk Varian taking away our free will by speaking of anything from the past. So although he knows about it, he just doesn't talk about it because he doesn't want us to lose that. Severin did not want us to have free will at all. Anyway, I'm trying to see. So after what Lurley has done to you, to all of us. So basically, Lurley is Ome. Ome did something. We don't know what necessarily, from what I understand. Let me double check. Is that because I think that's the only mention of her. Yeah, that's it. It's just the one mention. And but Lurley is the old name for Ome. But she apparently did do something. We just don't really know what she had done to everyone in that instance specifically. But Severin and Lannis know whatever it is. And so let's see. I'm just kind of reading through this to kind of remind myself of everything that happened. So with an outstretched hand, he works, creating the creation entire in his grasp as the creator. Da, da, da. Strands of history and time flow into his hands as though threads in a loom woven by ineffable will. His 10 fingers become many, his hands a clever multiplicity, yeah, through which the threads of existence effortlessly pass. All the light of the world seems to dim in a somber acknowledgement of that which is lost, a massed memory coalescing into variant scripts. Basically, stealing everyone's memories of what's going on except for Severin and for Lannis. Scarcely has Varian departed within the twin gods' clash, Severin already saying, "What have you done? Do you even know? You've doomed them, condemned them to a fate they cannot ever hope to avoid, because they will never again know peace, never again be content with what they have. You have seen to this. They will be sorrow, brother. This we know," said Lannis. "But loss and struggle will only make them seek higher heights, strive for greater existence, that which we have ordained." But they were definitely not happy with each other. And then Lannis ended it with, "Better free than forced to be happy," which was always kind of poignant to me in this whole thing, is that, at least they're free to decide if they want to be happy or not. And then they go through some other things here that is just general surveillance. I'm just trying to glance through here and see if there's anything specific. Let's see, relevant and manifold. Yeah, I don't know what some of these other ones. It would be good to probably read through them. Anyway, but that is the big one. It's basically, it was never Severin specifically. It was both Severin and Lannis that knew about it, but Varian took away memories. He took away all of these things from the gods. Took away just didn't tell anyone. And obviously Severin and Lannis are doing it. They're keeping their mouth shut for their own reasons. So yeah. And I feel like there's been more and more that's been coming out with these new gods that have come out that really help reveal that Varian's just probably the bad guy of our story. Okay, so going through the rest of our posts, this is where we start getting into 2022, and Sizabor just had his level 200 event. And then this event here is where Bloodlock started to really make us nervous. Essentially, a bunch of them got tokens from Ewis, and were able to lure people away for experiments without them being able to remember. People were just disappearing. Come to find out, and this is part of what the tensions with the whole earthen thing is, kind of a valid thing, because what ended up happening is they used this research and this knowledge with the help of the Earthen Lord, Ivon, the god of earth and undeath, went into the Underking or Death God's realm to try to steal somebody from it. Now, background there, Ivon and Dar, the god of death, used to be one back in the day. Davo. They were married. They have been since divorced, and really hate each other's guts, but also love each other at the same time. So this was a pretty big step for Ivon to be willing to go back into that area and really betray Dar at a very deep level, because this is his realm. This is the realm of souls. This is where special souls are kept. And this one was specifically one that had created an artificial soul, which would keep, people from ever having to go back to the mirror. If I'm understanding like the role play behind it. But yeah, so he snuck in there, snuck a bunch of mortals, living people, or not living people, but a bunch of mortals in there, and they stole that person. And on the way out, because Dar was not happy, obviously, there was a battle. There was a lovely battle. Yeah, you passed through some limb fields to get in there. It was weird. It was actually the limb fields were not necessarily. That is what you kind of used. They used the portal to get into it. But the actual area you're in was definitely in the Underking's realm. You were in there. Because Yeti was actually was in there for the event. So yeah, Dar came in. Basically, there was attacking on his part to try to get them to end and not be able to leave. And in the process, just to kind of summarize it, they soul mirror, which is the way for living people to come back from being dead, got cracked, essentially. So Dar ended up throwing out 3 spears out into different areas of the world where souls that had basically broken free from the underhalls because of this, the underworld, could be brought back in. So that was going to be the next step of the event. But that's definitely a big reason why Duran and Honorian are just really anti-Ivon now, heavier than they used to be, and just very wary of anyone of the undead and of Bloodlock and of, the Carnifex class. So, yeah, fun times. Anyway, but there were the spears. They were thrown into 3 different places. And basically this was a PK-ish event where we had to get to these spears to a certain level of souls being returned. Once we did that, we would be fine. Or we thought that would be some big way for us to help fix or help the Underking be able to fix his issue with the mirror. And Spirit did end up winning that. I think the other side, Shadow side, just didn't have the numbers, unfortunately, to really put up a ton of fight for it. We had a lot because everyone was heavily invested in this whole concept of, oh crap, we may not be able to be coming back to life. We should probably help fix this. Plus, Dar is very important to our side in general. So yeah, we were all very invested in it. So unfortunately, we ended up just having pretty heavy numbers. And I should have refilled my water. I am about out. Okay. Anyway, so we ended up winning. And a blow was brought against Ivon and he was gone. Basically, we haven't seen him. And then we went to an area that used to be heavily big on undead experience, and we destroyed it. So yeah, we had lots of fun times from that event. Now, that did not fix the mirrors. And what ended up starting to happen across the game is that from the pylons, which are basically, there's a resource called Lem, which comes from ley lines, which are, if you know magic type things, the ley lines are across the planet and are places of focal points of magic. That kind of concept is very much similar to what this is, but it is a resource we tap into to try to gather and collect for a variety of city benefiting and individual benefiting powers. But the pylons are the focal point where everything gets received for the organization. We started seeing creatures just coming out of them at random. Started out in Duran, and Duran apparently was a place that this has happened to before, so kind of hilarious to us for some reason. I still don't know it because I must have missed that event. But we started seeing the creatures coming and coming and coming, and we couldn't take them back to Delve, which is a part of Albados. And they're the ones that kind of help us with the technology that works the portals. So they couldn't even go back there. They were solely able to be kept in our plane, and that was it. And eventually, they all culminated into like little beetle-like creatures, and eventually became a body of things, and then took over a body of a person, and showed up and become the god of death, Pharaoh, and confused a lot of us because we haven't seen a god just force themselves to take a host like that necessarily. It was brutal. This is very much the Mummy kind of feel for it, which it was cool. But that was kind of what was going on there, is that this keeper of the clothes, Vero, showed up, took over the body, and basically said that he was there to go ahead and help fix the soul mirror, that he was, the god of death, not Dar. He's the usurper is Dar. And yeah, fun time. So we were all very, very confused as to what was going on here. He was very fond of undead, although he did say the undead that we have are not quite like his undead, so I don't know the difference there. In the conversations, he kept calling all of the gods of Sapience derivatives, which are basically alternatives or replacements, as I like to say. Did not know about the ability or the Ancurans, so clearly he was an old god, so from ages ago. Spoke of a city of Diason, which will become important with some of the other ones we see, and had memories up until the fourth sepulchral bell of the Dawn's Age. Didn't really know why he was asleep, doesn't remember necessarily going to sleep besides that, and just, said, hey, I'll be here to replace or to fix the soul mirror, and kind of basically said he would take things back over, potentially, because the other god is, a false one and not the true one and stuff like that. Now, through all of the different events because this post is like multi-day, he ended up opening up a spot out in the dry plains. Actually, we opened it up, a hatch. I'm gonna drink more. Yeah, a hatch that wasn't there before, so we don't know where the hell it came from. It just appeared all of a sudden. And it had a census station in it. And basically you could touch the station and see your soul in the past, in a sense. Like when your soul last touched that census station. Kind of interesting. We still don't have a ton of lore behind it, although there are responses from that census now that you can get some role play information behind. I still need to go back and read it because I have not read it all, but it's pretty interesting. So he brought that to us, showed it to us. He touched it to prove that he's a god. It did say that he was a god because it just recognized him as one. But we don't really know still really why he brought it about. I guess we're going to find out later from the other events. Now, some of the other events that have been going on while Vero was around, Severn and Bamathus were really taunting and saying, don't believe him, blah, 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 blah. And part of what caused issue with Severn and Bamathus and Ome was a reference of Broken Doll at one point. And Vero definitely revealed that that Varian was his creator, I do believe. Or at least Varian is like the creator. But said it in a different name. I think Variuch, yeah. So let's see. A parlor trick of the Celestines made to capture his voice and his face and beguile those who found resurrection into feeling that he cared for them. So basically saying the soul mirror was a fake thing. That Varian made was not the real true. And that the vision there is not actually him shepherding souls back. So that was also kind of interesting. It's like, oh, we kept thinking that Varian was the one sending us back, and he's not. He's not actually doing it. It's not him at all. He's not involved in it. Anyway, trying to just kind of skim through here and see if there's anything I'm heavily missing here. Let's see. So, disturbed by his scorn, and revealed by the Aeonic confluence to be a reluctant gifts of Varian, at pleading behest of Lanos, the goddess levied questions and accusations at the old god, but withered beneath his ruthless invective. Yeah, and this is where Demario and Ome had their little argument where Demario basically said, I can't talk to you about any of this because I gave freedom, so if I talk, it goes away. But he did admit that he knew nothing of Varro, stating only that the old god was of Varian's creation, much like himself and his siblings. Okay. Now, he did have, when Varro was doing his work, he was having memories of invasions of others and some other things, but nothing that he could quite remember. And he was our first one of these elder gods showing up that we were able to really be involved with. So we could see his memories and everything, or thoughts. But yeah, just nothing was able to be very, very concrete. It was just general, oh gosh, things have happened and they were bad. Now he did go and fix the mirror. He tried to help with that. And then he ended up going and touching the soul mirror, I believe it was, and just kind of, when it got fixed, he kind of died. Yeah. Yeah, that's basically, I'm trying to like read back through this. So I struggled. Okay. So yeah, Death Incarnate manifested beside him, which is Star, and Varro had finally realized what was going on. And his last moment, full of unspoken memory, swiftly followed by a scream of unspeakable terror directed at his absent father. So, Daddy was gone. So, with Varian's name on his tongue, the Keeper of the Close, the firstborn, and the long-forgotten god of death disintegrated. So that's another reason why we've got the whole Varian hate going on. Is that Varian not only had that whole, he did the memory stealing and he's done all these other things from the confluence. We're also hearing from all of these gods as they're dying, they're remembering Varian and lashing out at him. Like the next one, which is Yanai, was the next one to show up. And I think that most of this is probably, yeah, the ever-giving earth with Yanai, which was the renewal goddess, which was the next event to happen, and she is the mother of Varro. She was a very kind spirit and spoke to Lyrithiars, which were supposed to be prototype planes where life is formed, and just kind of gave us this whole lore of what sounded like Varian and all these gods were conquerors of worlds. So there were stars, so many stars, and they would come to those stars and kind of conquer them. That's what it was sounding like, but we never got full confirmation of that. But they did have these, life planes. That's where life started, and then came to the planet from there. Each world that sustained life, she went on to explain, had such a plane anchored to it. So we have one, and that may be what Dendara is. It may be a Lyrithiar, but we don't know. We never really got enough explanation there, but we did get some interesting lore about the whole stars and all of that. But let's see here, I'm just kind of glancing through. She went to the Bloodwood, got sad because it's so destroyed. Same thing with the Callidium, where she had shown up originally. Had a little convo with Hearn, but Hearn was very hesitant to accept her because of his whole background with Leyless, and he's still hurting from Bemathis and Severin's betrayal. Same thing with Duran. That's why a lot of Durrani people, unfortunately, were so hesitant to trust Yanai, is because of the fact that we've been burned too much recently from the event to really just embrace a goddess that could be something else. We just don't know. But she ended up doing a ritual in Callidian to renew it, and she did fix it, and she healed it, and she brought back to life her race, which was the Arborian race. But at the end of the ritual, she literally disintegrated as well. And Varian was on her tongue that she could not forgive him for this. To the people of Sapiens, a wish came I wish I could have renewed more than this one place. I am sorry. Now, that really got a lot of us in Duran because it was like losing Lelis all over again in a way. And because so many, and I know my character, Ririn, it was very affected by it roleplay wise because of the fact that so many of us just didn't really get involved. We didn't accept her. So it's definitely one of those pain points. And that's kind of the whole meme right now in our Discord is, how are they going to die this time? And yeah, they haven't posted anything for the recent event yet. So this catches us up. So it was Varro, which was the first god. And that's, then we had Yanai, and that's the next god. And I should say, she did reveal the number of how many original gods there were. I cannot remember the number right now. But it did match a number roughly to how many we had originally. Like back when we had Kepri and some of the other gods. And their roles sounded very, very similar. So it seemed like originally there were the same gods. And then we just have them kind of recreated now. So we've been getting tidbits of story from like what Varian's been doing and what he hasn't been doing, and so many more questions than we have answers. But it just keeps painting such a bad picture for him, for being just a bad father, an absent father, and a father that is clearly doing things for his own benefit, not really anyone else's, as far as we can tell. Does that mean he can't come back and be the hero at some point? We don't know. But that's definitely where the hate's coming from. Now, with this recent god, Caduceus, it was the god of time. And it came back specifically. And by the way, they don't know why they're being called back necessarily. They just are being called back. They don't really know. But they're being called back for a purpose and just a kind of a singular situation. So Caduceus comes back and just lets them know, hey, I accept it. I already know I'm going to die because I know the time. But hey, know that I'm already dead. All of us are. So they're all dead gods already. Spoiler alert. And they don't really know, who's done this besides that it may be Icarus potentially. I couldn't really follow some of that. Icarus is an Albeti god. And sorry, that's going to be people slacking me from work on a Saturday evening. Sorry, Getty. Sorry that it's buffering. Anyway, what was I saying? Icarus, which is the Albeti god of time, apparently set some of this stuff in motion. He actually did the confluence to let us have those visions and stuff to try to save Hearn from getting killed, against his own people from doing that, and really went against his own Albeti gods. But he is technically, according to Caduceus, his counterpart in this time is that Albeti god. So that does leave questions as to, okay, why is an Albeti god the counterpart to one of our normal gods? We don't know. There wasn't really any information as to why. He didn't really go into the whole Albeti thing, besides he did recognize that the Albeti gods were definitely a threat, and that was about all of that he went into with that piece. But he did, it did let us know that 2 to 3 more gods were going to come after him, or after them, all dead, and told us which ones they wouldn't be, potentially, out of the list that we knew. And it brought back a mirror dreamscape, like a memory of old Ashton. It's obviously been changed, but the big idea is that it's going to be a place where we're going to be seeing some of the, demise and the revelation we're supposed to learn about. We're supposed to be learning something to reveal Varian's true plans and Varian's true work, or something to that effect. And it did do its task. It did bring back that, and it did die. I am trying to think of any other tidbits we found out. Oh, I do know one of the next gods that comes is going to help me with potentially with some void questions. Don't know which one, but that's interesting and useful. I'm looking forward to that. But we did find out the city Dyson, I mentioned it earlier, was an actual city. It was where Ashton was in the past. It was actually the city before Ashton was, and it fell into the ocean, just like Ashton fell into the ocean. So we did have people asking questions, and that was part of what was in my other stream about, like, is this cyclical? I can't say that word. But it doesn't. They did answer that, hey, not necessarily. Don't let that get you, kind of wording. But that kind of brings you to this current point. So we've been having all these elder gods show back up. They're trying to get us to a point to see a revelation, and I know I just spent the last hour explaining all this. But they just, they're trying to get to this point of the revelation so we can know all this. So we just have to be patient. But every single one of them is already dead. So they're going to do whatever they're going to do, and they're going to disappear. They're not going to be remaining with us. So it's bittersweet, but it is an interesting story to see the world expanding. It does sound like there's a multiverse. I should say that was part of the thing yesterday. From that event, is that it does sound like there is a multiverse in our game. Don't know what that necessarily is going to mean. I'm hoping it doesn't mean somehow, for some reason, we merge with Ashton or have an event or not with Ashton, with Achaea. That would be really weird, but really crazy. But yeah, it's definitely been interesting because of these different pieces. So as much as I would like to go into this in more detail, I do think that gives a pretty decent summary. And with my voice being as dry as it is, I really need to go get water. And I do also want to go check in on my son and some other things. So I think that I'm going to end this stream right there, just to go ahead and leave it pretty clean with a really bad summary of the history of our game at like a very, very high level. And then the recent events to kind of give you some picture as to pain points between the different organizations and kind of the tension that's been building and the different role play that's been going on with the different recent events. And if this is something that ends up being useful to the player base or for people interested in the game, I will continue to do these things periodically, and maybe I can go deep dive into previous events and previous history and just kind of run through things. But hey, Yeti, thank you for stopping by. Appreciate it. And thanks to anyone that watches this video.